Good evening. Welcome to another session of the Sea of Glass. Tonight we're going, this is my book right now. This is not the Bible. This is the book that I wrote out of spiritual contents. So you can come to understand the scriptures with a spiritual mind and soul. You really have to change your way of thinking to understand the scriptures. And this is what we're working on. Try to get people to stop going to church and start thinking in spirit. Go ahead.
Okay, like Roger said, this is the book he wrote. However, it is based on the Bible. Okay, we're taking text from the Bible and explaining it in spiritual terms. And today we're going to go to the book of Numbers in the Old Testament. Now we are entering the book of Numbers, where your census will be counted in the tribe of Israel from Reuben, the firstborn of Jacob, to Benjamin, the last son of Jacob. When the Israelites left the land of Egypt to enter into the desert, they had 600,000 men, not counting women and children. Understand that the words men, women, and children are used here does not mean people in the physical sense. Always remember that the Bible is a book written for the spirit, not the flesh. So the teachings are written in spiritual terms. This cannot be stressed enough because it is one of the biggest keys to the understanding of the scriptures.
Okay, I want to explain that to you, and Mike's going to do his explaining after me. You got to understand that there's two worlds out there. And if you only think of the world of the mind and you're only educated in college and all that, you're not educated to understand the spiritual part of God's great power. So for some reason, God, kind of punished mankind to come to this day so we can come to understand it in spirit. It was not known before that, People didn't know what God meant about what his laws and all his power. So you got to understand that there's a world out there that's just spiritual. And you can enter that world and try to understand the world of the spirit in the most magnificent way that you could ever imagine. This is what heaven is going to be in the future. You're not going to have a heaven like the Christian are talking to you about, that you're going to fly around with Jesus circle around the sun there. That's not going to happen. It's not a world of magician. It's a world of spiritual term and spiritual value. So you can come to understand that this is the power that you have to change inside yourself to understand the spiritual part of you. You see, right now, you went to school and you learned everything about the mind. Now, it's a new school. It's a school about your spiritual power to understand God. And this is what it's all about. It's a new world. You're going to have to, and this is what the kingdom of God is going to be like. You're still going to have your physical life, and you're still going to have but you're going to have a spiritual life that's going to tell you what God is, the understanding of God, and you got to understand the power of what God is in what is for you to understand the above intelligent. God is more intelligent than man, so you have a higher power of intelligence. And once you start understanding God with that power of intelligence, you go into the world of the spiritual part. And this is what we try to do in this show, is try to bring the spiritual part of the scripture. It's nothing like you hear in church or in a false religion of any kind. It's a knowledge that comes inside of you and translates to you every verse of the Bible to you. And then you come to understand, and then you become very wise with that. You begin to understand the wisdom of this great power that we're created with. And that's the power of God. You see, right now, people don't know God. They just don't know what God is. A lot of people say, well, do you think there's a God? And then another one tells me, no, there's no God. You see, because this has never been introduced before. The spiritual part of the understanding of the Almighty God. And this is what we have to come to and make you understand. Mike, you got anything to add to that?
We are all physical beings. We live in the physical world. But we also have a spirit inside of every one of us. And there is a spiritual understanding as well as a physical understanding. And because your body will die off, and because the spirit lives forever, you have to build your foundation of your house, meaning your life, what you understand. The foundation has to be a spiritual foundation. It has to be a foundation of spiritual understanding. That's more important in some ways than a physical understanding, because it helps you. And organized religion hasn't built their house on a spiritual foundation because they don't understand how important and how powerful the spirit is. Some of them even think, well, the spirit's important like after you die, and then your spirit's going to go to this place called heaven, which is above the clouds somewhere. And it's not true. But so because they haven't developed the power of the spiritual understanding, everything is done in physical. There's physical churches, there's physical rituals, there's physical sacrifices. They don't understand that it's all supposed to be done in spiritual terms, with a spiritual understanding. Spiritual worship in a spiritual temple, with spiritual sacrifices. And this is what's important. Organized religion stopped because they only reached a certain point and they didn't progress beyond that because they don't understand in spiritual terms. The scriptures must be understood in spiritual terms because this is the way the Lord has set it up to be. Even, and I've said this before many times, even the parables of Jesus were physical examples, but it was to teach a spiritual lesson, and they were used because the people didn't understand in spiritual terms. It was way above their head. They couldn't understand. So they were used, Jesus used as physical examples and then said, understand these things in spiritual terms now that you grasp the concept. And this is what organized religion doesn't do, which is why they don't go far enough, which is why that they worship a false god, because they're going against God, because they're physical rituals and physical sacrifices and everything is graven images and it's idol worship. And so we have to get back to the spiritual understanding of these spiritual laws, and you must practice them if you wish to worship the one true God the way that he is meant to be worshipped. And Rita's going to continue some more. Go ahead.
Any references to previous generations of males, like your father, grandfather, ancestors, etc., means a spiritual understanding of the past, the way that you used to believe. The term man in the scriptures means spiritual understanding of the present generation, what you currently understand in spirit. And when you see the term son, that means your future spiritual understanding, what you have not yet learned in spirit and therefore cannot yet understand. It is the same with females, except on the other side. The male is on your spiritual side of your understanding, and the female is the physical side, your mind. Therefore, when the scriptures mention any females, this means the wisdom of your mind.
Okay, you really have to get into this to understand this. This is not something that somebody just invented. It was there from the beginning. God said, you got 6 days to work, and the 7 days I'll be there. I'll take over. And this is where God is taking over right now, because you got 6,000 years in the desert that, people came and, practiced religion of all kinds, and they could not understand what the kingdom of God was all about. This is what we want to bring to you, the kingdom of God himself. And it's going to be a future generation where people are going to be totally spiritual. And they ain't going to be no more think that somebody's going to read the Bible and translate it in the physical way. It's going to be a new world. And everybody around us is going to understand that world. And I tell you, it's going to be a beautiful place to live because nobody will hurt each other. See, right now, people hurt each other and they don't know what power you have inside yourself to ask the Lord for for justice. The people are living in total darkness, and they're trying to understand something that is not true. And they think that, they got a little job from the state and they got this and that, and they think they can hurt anybody they want with that little job. It could be a police officer, it could be somebody that, and so they take this literally in you see, right now there's no such sin as in the physical part. Sins are in your spiritual part. When you sin against the Lord, you believe something falsely, believe that you committed something. You can sin in physical way because this is what hurts one another. But this is not the important of it. The real important of it is to be able to enter into the world of the Spirit and understand what are you doing to your friend, to your fellow man on earth. People can't respect and they can't love their fellow man because they don't understand anything. What they're trying to do is bring the value of their job or the value of the responsibility that they give it in the world, and they're ready to hurt people with that. This is not the understanding of it. The understanding of it is to be able to learn the Spirit and learn what God has made in laws and try to understand them in the spiritual way, and then you will be able to treat your brother much, much easier than you do now, because people don't understand the spiritual part of your brother. And so they don't think, they call people a piece of crap or a piece of or garbage. They don't really know what's inside that person. It's so awful to hear people. Me, I would never call a man a piece of crap or stupidity, because I know there's a spirit inside that comes from the Lord God. And it's part of it. You have to learn to understand it, to love your brother. And this is what it's meant. I would not hurt anybody around me. I was a landlord, and I would hate to evict anybody when they didn't pay the rent, because I always was afraid to hurt my brothers, because I understand the spiritual side of it. Once you study the spiritual side, you take anything in the scriptures. And this is what I wrote this book for, because this book is what's going to refer to you in the spiritual terms, so you can come to understand the great power of the Lord your God. You see, what happened in the past, it was physical. Everything was physical. You were going to hell physically, you're going to sit in the fire, and you're going to burn there for all eternity. That's stupid. Because they think that because the Bible was written that way, to teach you the physical part, and so you belonged it, you made it up. I remember as a kid, I used to go to church and be scared to go to this fire hell and sit there for the rest of eternity, because I did not understand that. Today I understand that so perfectly. It's such a beautiful thing to be able to understand everything in beautiful spiritual value, because you know what the laws of God are not in physical. The 10 Commandments are all spiritual. Okay, Mike?
See, 600,000 had left to to escape slavery, but they go through the desert in Egypt. Now, again, that is spiritual, like we're saying. And because they were men, because it says not including women and children, we're talking about 600,000 spiritual teachings, because again, it's male, so it's spiritual. 600,000 spiritual teachings were brought out of slavery, and it's in the desert. Now, the desert, again, like we're saying, this is just physical examples to understand the spiritual teachings. So the desert, in the physical sense, is a barren place where there's no water and not a lot of things grow. It's pretty barren. So in spiritual terms, it's a barren place, which means when it happens, what you have is spiritual ideas that you start to understand mankind starts to understand maybe it's not what we always thought it was. When these spiritual ideas were in slavery, they were enslaved by organized religion, by falsehood. And because they were in slavery, now they're not, but we still don't understand them. We're going through the desert to get to the promised land. We're going through the process of understanding. First, we understand that they're not what we thought they were, these spiritual understandings. And we're going to a place where we will understand, and they can thrive, and they can live inside of us, and we can understand them. But it has to go through the journey of the desert, which is the sacrifice that everything must go through in spiritual terms. So this is where we're at. And this is the period we're at where people, you look around and you can see it. People don't think like they used to think before. But they don't know exactly what it is, but they know it's probably not what we always thought it was. And here you have, again, when Rita had mentioned, we talk about our fathers and grandfathers' generation. You know, people will, when you say in physical terms, in my father's day, in my grandfather's day, in my ancestors' time, you're thinking about how things used to be. And you can look at the present time and say, it's not like it used to be then. Ideas were different. Technology was different. Things, the way we lived our lives, everything was different. And you're referencing those old times, and a lot of times what you end up thinking about is, we didn't know as much as we know now. We haven't advanced as much as we advance now. And it's the same thing in spirit. We're not spiritually advanced. We are spiritually advanced more so now than we were in the past, because now we don't deal with superstitions like we did in the past. We still do to a large extent, but they're slowly, you can see they're slowly fading away, because people are realizing that these things don't make a lot of sense. And then when you talk about the son and the future generations and the offspring, that's, you're thinking about what it's going to be like in the future. Things are constantly evolving, and they're evolving to a point to get to where we can understand them. And sometimes things don't go the way we think they should, and things seem to go a little bit off the deep end, and they're going in a different direction. But it's all the process of understanding where we need to be and where we're going. And it's not really, you look at it and say, well, we're making mistakes. It's not really mistakes as much as it is we don't really know, so we're trying things, and we're going to settle to a point of understanding how things really work. And we're going to find out some more. Go ahead, Rita.
Entering the desert is done in spiritual value, not in the physical sense. You will have inside your soul 600,000 feelings. This means all the feelings on all the subjects of life that you have inside you. When you first cross over to the desert, you will see very little reality, and you will understand very little in spirit. This is because you are crossing into a new world that was promised to us in the book of Revelation, where you will be given a new world to understand with. The new world is not in the physical part of ourselves, because God has already created this physical part. It is a new world in the understanding of the above, where you live in the desert for 40 lifetimes, and you try to understand the purpose of life and who you are in spirit. Understand well here that when you first cross into the desert, you do not see, nor do you know where you are going. You are going there without water, meaning without reality. You will cross the desert with Moses, the laws of God, for 40 lifetimes on earth. This means 6,000 years of struggling with this human understanding. The reality of the new world will be yours after you cross the Jordan into the land of Canaan.
See, the land of Canaan is the promised land, but it's not what you think like in the physical way. If you go to California back years ago in wagon train, you know, they had to cross the country, you know what I mean, to get there. And it took 3 or 4 months to get there. And you got to understand here that a spiritual term is different, because we had to wait 6,000 years for this power that we have inside of ourselves to be known to us. And the Lord finally said, okay, now we got it going for, 6,000 years. And you could not understand. You went to church for 6,000 years and you didn't understand nothing. It was one thing after another that they taught you, and they taught that they were priests and they were ordained and they were. But see, this is not important. The thing is for each one of us to come to understand that this is a new world that God has promised us. We will have a new world where people will respect each other and we will all work together to, like I always like that verse in the New Testament when everybody's got to try to work together to make it. And all the fishermen will be there and try to understand. Once you have the world with their mind turns to the spiritual way, you're going to come to understand the greatest power of all. You're going to come to understand that inside of you, it's not a matter of how you look, how you feel, how you are. It's a matter of who you are. God has created a beautiful spirit inside of you that you have to learn to understand, and you have to work at it. There's no such thing as a lazy man that's going to go in the new heaven, because the new heaven is made out of hard work. How to understand yourself, how to make yourself equal to others. You're working on yourself. You're not working on anybody else. You see, they got all these preachers that are working on everybody else, but they don't work on themselves to understand the scriptures and try to understand inside of them, there's part of them that is not known right now. And you have to learn that. Everybody's going to take the Bible in their hand and take my book here and try to understand that this is the way it's going to be in the future. People are not going to think stupidly like they think now. They're not going to be ignorant no more. People are going to come to understand this amazing knowledge that God is. And when you begin to understand it, God is not just an idol like you have now. Everybody in Christianity believes that God's an idol. God is an idol. He punish you if you do this. He punish you if you do that. This is not what God is. God is a knowledge that comes inside of you to perfect your existence. And when you perfect your existence, you become a good person with everybody else. You don't have to throw people, and you don't have. And you're going to see the greatest criminal come out of their jail system, and they're going to come and understand the scriptures. Because the Lord said that the poor will inherit the earth. The people that think they're too smart and they have too much college and they have too much education will not be able to understand. Because it's not an understanding of what happened in the world. It's what happened inside of you throughout your existence. This is the existence of the Lord your God. And it's inside of you. And it makes sense for you to become one and the same with the spiritual power of yourself. God is the truth. And then once you start worshiping the truth as God, it becomes not just an idol no more. It becomes reality, because we all have some truth inside of us. And we like to believe in that truth. But if the whole world is astray with the stupidity of the mind and they all kill each other without any benefit of life, this is what hurts the world. And because a human being is really ignorant when it comes to spiritual power. He's not intelligent with it. And once you start understanding from my book the great power of the Spirit and how to translate this part into a spiritual knowledge, you will find the greatest deed and the greatest gift of all. God is the truth. Okay, Mike.
See, the goal here, and this is exactly how life goes, but you think about the story of the Exodus, and you think about the Israelites were enslaved in Egypt, and again, this is in the physical sense, but so they go the goal is to go to the promised land, and they have to go through the desert to get to the promised land, the land of Canaan. Now, in the spiritual terms, you're in slavery because you're a slave to the ideas that aren't true, the false ideas that go against the teachings of the Lord God. So you want to break free from that slavery. And when you do, you want to get to the promised land, the land of milk and honey. That's the land where you can understand your feelings and understand the laws as the Lord has written them to be understood in truth. But you have to go through the sacrifice. Nothing in life that you do comes without a sacrifice. Hard work and sacrifice help you get in shape, or if you're losing weight, or if you're trying to learn to do anything in life, there's always a sacrifice involved, and it's the same thing in spirit. You have to sacrifice, and you have to get to a period. When we talk about the desert having no water and it's barren, what we mean is that's true of a desert in the physical sense. In the spiritual sense, you're in the desert. You've given up what you know not to be true, but you don't know what is true yet. So there's really no reality, no water in the desert at this point when you're going on your journey, because you don't know what is reality. You know what you thought was reality, and you know what you used to believe in was true, but now you don't know what it is yet. So you're willing to give it all up and become a clean slate, for lack of a better way to put it, so that you can understand what is reality and what is real truth. And that's what the journey is spiritually, going through the desert to get to the promised land, because that's what you have to do. You have to be willing to say, I don't know. I thought I knew, but I know that's not true. I don't know what is true. And in order to learn what is true, I'm willing to accept that it could be anything. So when you want to understand how things really work, you have to give up. Like there are people that will say they've lost something, and they'll say, well, I don't know where it is, but it can't be under the couch, or it can't be out in my car, or it can't be in my coat pocket. Well, if you don't know where it is, it could be anywhere. And so the thing is, that's why you have to say, well, it could be anything, and I want to know what it is, and I'm willing, whatever it is, to find it, because that's what's important to me. And that's how spiritual understanding works. And that's why the process is that you have to go through the desert where there's no reality, and where there's no spiritual food to eat. But it gets provided by the Lord, because you're trusting in the Lord to bring you to that place. And the Lord provides those things for you along your journey, because you're not in a place where you can find them yourself, because they're not just there for the taking, like in the land of Canaan. And that's what's very important to understand. And we're going to see more. Go ahead, Rita.
Understand well that this is a journey in the power of the Lord, who brought you to this desert of human understanding, where you do not know exactly where you are going. You left false religion to go there, and believe me, there is a lot to learn. Try to understand that these 600,000 feelings are already inside of you. You have 600,000 feelings and understandings inside of you to cross over to the desert, where you will travel in the sight of God to reach the land of Canaan. Try to obey the power inside you to understand that you already have 600,000 feelings of value inside your soul. You need to enter the kingdom by crossing the Jordan River into the valley and the land of Canaan.
You got to understand here that the physical part of the story here that you guys have learned from the scriptures is the Israel was a chosen people, and then they suffered 400 or 500 years in Egypt and everything else. And God said, I'm going to send you a great person that's going to pull you out of that, and is going to bring you into a desert of knowledge until you come to the understanding, and you cross into the Jordan, and then you go down to Jericho to understand the great power of the creation. where you're going to march around the city for 7 times around, and then the wall of the city will fall down. Jericho, and you got to understand that Joshua here is the angel of freedom. You got to understand that this is the angel of freedom, that you're going to come to understand the glory of the understanding of what this whole story is all about. The whole story tells you that you're not going to be the same. You don't have to be an Israel to make this trip. You have to be a human being. That's all that there is. God chose, for some reason, the children of Israel to make the story physical so he can bring it to a spiritual term. But you got to understand that it's not the Jewish people that has the better understanding. It's the great power that spiritual knowledge has to be translated inside each one of you. Each person has to come and say, God told me that I was going to have a new life. And my new life is going to be different from the old one. And I'm going to be able to understand that inside of me, there's the journey of the Lord your God that you have to know, that understand. And God punished people all the time because you keep on not hearing nothing that he's telling you. And this is why people are so miserable in life, because they can't understand why they go to church every week and all kinds of things happen to them. Remember a woman there lost her son, by a car accident. And she said, why do you do this to me, Lord? Why do you do this? Why? Because you never heard nothing that I said to you. And most people don't hear what God tells them. And this is why the Lord comes and punishes you, because he wants you in his heaven to learn the new way of understanding life. There was so much understanding in the past that should have been learned, but was not learned. People went to California in the wagon train, and the Indians, attacked them, and there was no water, and there was nothing. It's the same thing as what we're doing now. If you don't understand reality, you don't know why these things happen in reality. If there's something that you did that's wrong, there's a lot of things that you did that's wrong. If you don't believe in the Lord your God, it's wrong. The Lord will inform you. And I look at my life, and I look the way it is, and I hear the Lord speaks to me every day. He doesn't speak to me in word like we talk to each other. He speaks to me in feeling inside of me. And those feeling comes alive. And then they know what it means to do this and that. You got to listen to the part of yourself that, you haven't heard from your ears. You haven't seen with your eyes, but you understood it with your heart. See, this is what the Lord is. The Lord is inside your heart, and he tell you to turn left or to turn right, and you refuse to go there. Like I tell you, don't go to church on Sunday, because these people don't know the scriptures, and they gotta misguide you. But you don't hear that. Oh no, my religion is the best in the world. Oh yeah, I'm gonna go to the promised land. That's not true. You can't go to the promised land unless you learn inside your life to be a spiritual human being. And this is where it has to be. The spiritual part of yourself, it's to come to an understanding where a black man for a white person, it has to be just as equal to you as you are to him. And it's the same thing with the Chinese or anybody in the world. Everybody has to be equal to you. And how are you going to do that in a world of mystery and a world of bigotry that we live in? Everybody thinks that, you can call people names and all kinds, but it's not the point. The point is that you have to understand that this person is just as important to the Lord, because he has all the same symptoms inside of them as you are. If you hurt him, you'll be hurt. If you beat him up, you'll be in pain. you got to understand that everything that you do to others is what is done to you. And that's why there's so many people that don't understand the glory of God on earth. And the reason, because religion did not teach them how to understand things in spirit. They think a difference between a black and a white man is a big difference. There is no difference. It's just in your mind, because you're too ignorant to understand that they equal. Everybody's equal. If you hurt a black man, if you hurt a Chinese, if you hurt anybody in the world, you have committed a great sin. You see, all the sin of the Spirit is what's inside of you. And if you keep making sense of spirit, even though you go to church every week and you think you're the greatest guy on earth, that's not the point. The point is that you have to understand the glory of a human being that's inside of you, that's equal to all others. Because God did not create you different than a black man. He did not create a black man different than a white man. He did not do that. Inside of us, we have the same exact feeling. If you slap a black man, he's going to feel it, and he's going to be hurt. You know, if you rape a black woman and think that this is the way it is, you're taking the spirit for granted, and you don't understand that the power of that person, the little person that's in your life there, is the great glory of what is not. Because inside of you, he's equal to you. And if you hurt him, you are going against the Lord your God. You're not going against that person. You can tell him all the bigotry that you want, and you can call him all kinds of names, and you can do anything you want, but that person is still equal to you. And when he's equal to you, when you hurt him, the pain. In the future, we're going to have a little different thing about the future. Because people are going to know what power that each one of us has. Because they're going to study the Spirit. And everybody's going to know that this person that was worthless on the street is just as important as you. And it may be a little bit more important, because the last are first and the first are last. So the thing is, you got to be careful. When you see someone that you think is worthless, be careful. Because this is what we're going to know in the future, that each one of us has this great power of human understanding above all understanding. And that's the thing that you have to work for. Okay, Mike, you want to throw something?
See, breaks down like this. We are all equal. And despite that, we have differences. Some people are taller than others, or stronger than others, or any of that. Some people look differently, but we're all equal. And in order to understand that equality, and in order to truly love one another, you have to look at the human race as we instead of us and them. Because we are all the same despite our differences. Deep down inside and spiritually, we all have the same feelings. We all get hurt. We all get happy and sad and angry, and we all have things we know and things we don't understand. And so you have to look at it as we. And when you look at, okay, the blacks versus the whites, or any race versus another race, or male versus female, or, you know, you'd have the Jewish versus the Muslims, and you have the Catholics versus the Protestants, and everything. Everybody, when you really look at it, everybody looks at it as us versus them. Democrats versus Republicans, fans of this team versus fans of that team, and they're all trying to divide everybody instead of to look at it as, okay, we're different, but it's all we. And the thing is, if you don't, okay, because, and here's another point too, everything that you do and say in life comes from what you believe in. So whatever you do and whatever you say, it's because you believe it's okay to do. You are going to be able to get away with it on some level, or you've already gotten away with it. You've already been told somehow or other that it's okay to do, and that's why you do it. Or you could be doing it out of your ignorance, which okay, well, it's still ignorance, but you have to understand what you're doing. And you have to understand why you're doing the things you're doing and what is okay and not okay to do and say and to believe before you go ahead and do it. And that's why you join something like an organized religion and they tell you that this is something you shouldn't do, but they don't understand it themselves. That's why you have to understand it inside of yourself. You have to go inside of yourself and ask the Lord everything that you're feeling, everything that you wonder about. You have to ask the Lord and say, Lord, is this true? What is the truth on this subject? Because I want to believe what's true and not believe what isn't true. And one of the first things you have to understand is that nobody really knows, everybody knows things that are different, just like everybody looks different or has different abilities and talents, but everybody knows things that are different. And nobody's better than anybody else. Nobody's higher than anybody else because of what they know. So you have to really understand that, because that's what's important. So you have a chef in a restaurant who makes all these fancy gourmet meals, but he needs the person that takes the trash out and washes the dishes to provide him with the stuff he needs to cook with, and you need the delivery person that delivers the food that he orders so you can cook it, and people that serve it and everything. So I'm using a restaurant analogy here, but everything is can't work without the other. And that's what you have to understand here, is you have to go and understand inside of yourself and ask the Lord, well, this person says this, or that person said that, or I read this or I see this on the news, and what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. Because if you truly want to know, you'll ask the Lord, and the Lord has promised to tell you. So you can't just go with what somebody else says and they all say, trust me, like a car salesman or any kind of salesman. Trust me, I won't steer you wrong. But they are in the organized religion because they don't know themselves. They think they know, but they really don't. So that's why you have to do it yourself. These feelings have to be inside of you, and you have to make that decision, these 600,000 feelings, to cross over from what you don't know, to go through the desert to get to the place that you do, where you will understand what's going on. And you have to do it. The Lord has said you have to come to this understanding, because there's no value in it unless you understand the difference in what to do and what not to do. Go ahead, Rita. We'll find some more.
There's one thing that I want to add up to this there. You got to understand the laws, the 10 Commandments. And when you get to the 6 days, the Lord give you to work. On the 7 days, the laws of the Sabbath. You really have to understand the laws of the Sabbath, because the laws of the Sabbath tells you want to know something inside yourself, you have to work on it 6 times inside yourself, and on the 7 days, it becomes you get the answer for it. This is the way it works. The laws of Sabbath were not put there for the 6 days of the week, and on Sunday you go to church. That's not true. That's a bunch of baloney. The truth is, this is the way how you're learning. It's from the laws of Sabbath. The laws of Sabbath inside of you, and what Mike tells you there, it's the truth. You got to understand that the laws of Sabbath works for you. It works for me, so it will work for you. And you see, once you want to know something about the scriptures and that you don't make sense to you, you put it and you read it 6 times, or you go over it 6 times, and then you'll have the march on the 7 days where the wall of Jericho will fall, and you'll be able to understand what's really wrong, what's really truth, and then this is what the wall of Jericho is. That's what it's a story of the Bible. It's a story to tell you how to learn, and you have to use that law to learn with, because this is one of the commandments of the Lord. Before, everybody believed that working on the Sunday was a great sin. It's not true. That's the physical part. The spiritual part is to understand what you do not understand and to make sense out of it. And I believe you. You will see on the 7 days the door of heaven will open for you. Go ahead, Rita.
I'm just going to repeat the last line of the last paragraph I read. You need to enter the kingdom by crossing the Jordan River into the valley and the land of Canaan. You will have to fight your way there and gain the support of the Lord your God because you come from being a sinner. You have been struggling with the Lord in the battle of Jacob and the valley where God and man is trying to witness the purpose of life on earth. If one is counted in the value of the new heaven and the new earth, things will change dramatically in spiritual value, where old things will be made new. What will be new will be accepted, and what is old will be destroyed. Believe me, in this next 1,000 years, you will see the change of this new world, and your spirit will come alive in the counted value of the 600,000 feelings to gain life in the spiritual value of the future. This new world will be created in the values of the God of heaven. Remember that this new world has already been created and will come to be. You must change from where you were to where you will be, and from who you were to who you will become. Just understand the scriptures where things must change to save this world from disaster. What must be destroyed, and what must be created anew must be created anew. The world has to change in the form of intelligence.
Okay, I want to tell you, I still want to talk about the laws of the Sabbath here, because this is the part the laws of the Sabbath make sense. Because inside of us, we have the laws of God. And if you don't follow those laws of God, people have been practicing 6 days of work and, since the beginning of time. But I want to tell you, this is not a physical thing, it's a spiritual thing. And you got to understand, and when I understood that, the first time that I read that and understood it, I was reading the Ten Commandments, and it came to me. It's a spiritual value, like everything else in the scripture. It's a spiritual value that you have to practice to learn with. Nobody's dumb out there. It's just that they don't know how to do it to learn with. So they can't think of it because they don't use the right things. The Lord gives you these beautiful laws that you got to read things 6 times before, and then on the 7th, the Lord gives you the wisdom. This is how I learned everything in the Bible. I learned from the scriptures and from the power of the scriptures where a human being becomes a human being in full knowledge when he follows the laws of, and this is one of the laws of God. And you have to understand that to understand that it's so easy to practice. You read it 6 times. It probably won't come right there, but the Lord will make it come to you because you follow his laws. See what I mean? When you try to understand the scriptures by yourself, you don't use the law to understand it, and that's why the Lord made that law there, so you can come to understand that the laws of God is in the laws of Sabbath. Sabbath is a word that means you're going to learn something new. And that's what it's all about. And when the Lord gives you that to understand, I tell you, I was so happy when I understood that. I was so happy in myself because one time in my life, I made something and I made so much progress. And after that, everything that was in the scriptures came to me. And people try to tell me sometime, oh, yeah, this is what it is. You got to understand that this is the way to understand God. And if God did not make that 5th commandment in the scriptures, it would not have made sense. Because God, in other words, God gives us a route to get to his word. And that's where the route is. Don't try to understand it with your little mind. Put it in your spirit 7 times around, and then the wall of Jericho will fall on the 7 days. In other words, you blow in the trumpet 7 times, and that's what the Bible tells you. And then on the 7 days, the wall falls, and you understand what it means perfectly. And you know what's evil, and you know what's good. Before that, I didn't know what was good or evil. Now I know because I went through the laws of Sabbath to understand it. It's not my law, it's the laws of God. I'm not telling you this. Don't worry about the day of the week or the Sunday or Monday. It has nothing to do with that. That's physical. Comes to the greatest power of the spiritual of God in 7 days. And it also means that you would live 6,000 years, and the 7,000 years you will learn, the Bible will open to you. And this is what we want people. The scriptures has to open now. I'm going to tell you, the best thing I can tell you, don't go to church. Because they don't understand what they're talking about there. They don't understand the scriptures. They did not use the laws of Sabbath to understand it, so they cannot understand it. They might be a big pope, a cardinal of all kinds. They don't know nothing about God. Because God is part of the truth that lives inside of you. And if you want to know that truth, of His truth, you have to go to the laws of truth. That's what I have to say. Mike, you want to add anything to that?
Yes. First of all, I want to say, which I didn't say in the beginning, but you can find out more about the Sea of Glass online. You can look up the Sea of Glass and you can understand more. Rita said about we're sinners, see, and to understand that we come from being a sinner. Now that is simply you don't understand the laws of God in truth and how to follow them. That's the same as you don't know how to build a house, so you couldn't do it successfully. You don't know how to cook a meal that's delicious and looks good. You don't know how to do these things. You can't play guitar. So you will fail every time. It's just like, the laws of gravity. You don't understand the laws of gravity, you will fail. You will think that you can jump off the roof of your house and flap your arms and you can fly like a bird. But it doesn't work like that because you don't understand how it works. So you are a sinner because regardless of how much you want to follow the laws of God, if you don't understand them, you can't do it. So you need to understand the laws of God so you will not be a sinner, and your goal is to get to the point where you're not a sinner. So how you do that is you have to learn how. And having somebody else explain these things to you is you're not necessarily going to learn for yourself. So you're going to even watch a show like ours and you're going to go to the Lord hopefully and say, God, these people say this on this TV show. Just like you would say any preacher or anything that you read about spiritual topics, you would say, Lord, I wonder if this is true or not. And the Lord will tell you what the truth is. And it's not about at that point that somebody told you or somebody doesn't tell you, so they should be exalted or raised above other people. No, we're all the same. Just like I said before, it's we, it's not us and them. Somebody has to bring the understanding. And so the understanding is brought, and that's what's important, is to be celebrated. So that's how you become not a sinner, but you get to the point where you say, okay, well, I didn't understand in the past. I want to get to the point where I do understand, which means I'm going to be in the middle. And now I want to get to the understanding, and we just got our signal for 2 minutes, so let's wrap it up.
Okay. Thank you for tuning in.
Riverview Apartments is Bristol's two-time beautification award-winning residence community for adults age 55 and older. They offer 1 or 2 bedroom apartments with modern appliances, air conditioning, wall-to-wall carpet, and tiled floors. Both heat and hot water are included. Riverview also offers a wide range of activity rooms that include a billiard parlor and a spacious community room. It is handicap accessible with safe, secure parking for tenants and ample off-street parking for visitors. 860-940-6757 or riverviewbristol.com.